Good day, everyone. This is a digital live stream, a first time innovation for Solar Plaza. And what you see, these times are challenging us to try new things, other things than we're used to, and also make mistakes and learn from those. So thanks for still being with us. I hope you enjoyed the movie we just broadcasted. And I'm here at Solar Plaza, Rotterdam, the Netherlands, while the sun is setting. My name is Lisette Buist, and I'm a project manager at the Solar Asset Management team. You might know me from our Solar Asset Management conferences when I'm walking around on stage, actually being able to interact with you live. Today, this is a little bit different, and I'll be speaking to you via this live stream. I'm very happy that you're here, and we're actually really ready now to get started. Before we're going to jump to the content, because that's the part we're looking forward to serving you, I'm surely going to have a little chat with one of my colleagues who I haven't seen in a long time. From home. And we're going to be calling Tom van Dorp, our Chief Commercial Officer, and hear a little bit about what has happened in the past weeks and why we're not in North America at the moment, gearing up for our conference that would take place next week, 7 and 8 April.
Hi, Lisette.
Hey, Tom. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Haven't seen you in a while.
No, it's true, unfortunately.
How are you doing?
All is well, all is well. I mean, getting used to working remotely, like every one of us, I guess.
So working remotely, Tom, that's a challenge, right? We're normally at the office together. So what is your best tip actually for all of us working from home? Can you share with us a best practice?
Yeah, of course. I mean, for me, the main lesson of the last days is don't get stuck at your desk. Stay on the move. While in cold, I typically walk around wearing wireless headphones, as most of our colleagues will recognize from the office, and I keep on doing that through the house.
I can imagine. That's a really good tip. We're used to seeing you run around here in the office, being on calls. So I would advise everyone indeed to keep on moving and get up from the desk from time to time. So Tom, our CEO, Edwin Coate, uses to say, expect the unexpected. Well, we're all in a very unexpected situation right now. But you've been with the company for a long time. How does this situation resemble to a situation we've had before, if any?
Well, I think the solar industry is a vibrant industry, but certainly the Corona crisis was unexpected, I think for all of us. So we never had to postpone an event, if I remember well, before. So, well, we've done events on every continent for over a decade now, so I don't remember postponing any. I did see many challenging events, and most of that virtually is happening behind the scenes, so the participants don't recognize or don't see anything of that.
So, Tom, because you're speaking to a lot of our partners, do they recognize the learnings that we're going through in these times? Are they having similar unexpected situations? What things do they take away from this in your conversations?
Yeah, I think good question. What I see is that a lot of companies now realize they should not underestimate the current situation. So what I've seen and my main takeaway is to make sure you have a proper plan B, work on that, but at the same time prepare a plan C as well. So get ready for different scenarios, because companies struggle at the moment to estimate how long this will take and how significant the impact will be on their businesses, and that's natural because it is unclear and things are escalating quickly. But being prepared for different scenarios is, I think, the key takeaway.
Yeah, so preparing for different scenarios is something we're also trying to do here in the company with SAMNA Live that we're gearing up for. Maybe rounding off, what are you most excited about in the SAMNA Live that's coming up next week?
Well, I think it's a great way of continuing what we've started and where the team has worked so hard on, a great conference program, and still trying to bring some of the highlights together in 2 days of virtual conference. And hopefully soon we can have a physical meeting again. But I think we had to diversify now. We're focused as a business very much on physical conferences, and suddenly that's not feasible anymore. And I think the team has done a great job, and I'm really excited to see how the platform comes together. There's a lot invested into this in the past weeks. So yeah, I'm excited about that. And It will further accelerate the way how we can share knowledge with the industry and how we can help companies to make new connections.
So Tom, as part of accelerating the sustainable energy transition, even in these difficult times, today we're going to talk about operational impacts of COVID-19. But from your talks with your partners, what is a key impact that you see that could be lasting actually from this situation into the future of solar industry?
Well, I think the solar industry is a resilient industry, but we will be impacted at first. But I expect this also to be compensated in 2021, to be honest, as solar is the cheapest source of energy. Energy is needed all over the world still, so we will see an additional growth next year is what we currently expect. All in all, I believe that this whole situation will further accelerate the way we do business. Almost everything can and now is forced to be done virtually. So ultimately, you'll see an even faster growing solar industry in the near future. So that's where I'm hoping for, and I expect this to turn out positively at the end of the day. But of course, we will see an impact now.
Okay, well, thanks a lot, Tom, for sharing those insights. I think now we're all excited to go into that content and to get a sneak peek of what we can expect at SAMNA Live next week. As Tom said, for us it's very important in these dynamic times with a lot of challenges to try to keep on hosting quality content to you with expert speakers in our network, as well as trying to connect you to create new business opportunities. So this is what keeps us driving through, working on our mission. And that's also why today we're really excited to have a panel geared up on the operational impacts of COVID-19. After this panel where we dive into the content, we're also going to give you the opportunity to discuss a little bit with us about SAMNA Live, which is coming up next week on the 7th and 8th. We'll share with you a little bit of the program that we have in mind, the speakers that we're going to talk to at those dates, and we're very happy to also hear your feedback on that. So please stay tuned also after the panel to ask your questions about that and share your thoughts with us so that we can improve these services. But for today, we're really excited to hear what can we learn from the current view on the operational impact of COVID-19 and how can we also as an industry mitigate the risks that occur there. And for that, we're going to go to the other side of the world, actually to North America. And we're connecting with Amanda Bybee, CEO of Amicus, who will be hosting today this panel and who will be inviting the other speakers to join here online in the conference. Feel free to ask all your questions during the panel, dropping notes in the comment box at LinkedIn or YouTube or in Zoom as well in the chat box. And we'll try to, as much as possible, integrate those questions into the conversation. So if we can get Amanda on the screen, please. Hi, Amanda. Good to see you.
Hello. You too.
So how are you today? Are you excited as well?
I am. It's definitely a new experience for me as well as for all of us to do this online and to test the new technologies. I think we're all discovering the joined trials of everyone being online at the same time and how that affects our bandwidth.
Indeed, I think one of the most heavy issues we can face nowadays in our work is that the internet is collapsing. So I guess it's one of our key necessities right now to keep on going and keep on progressing. So I hope during this live stream the bandwidth will keep up and will keep all the speakers. But forgive us as well if it doesn't, because as you said, we're trying this out now and we're doing our best to present the content in the best way we can. So Amanda, the floor is yours. Enjoy the next hour and feel free to invite all the other speakers into the screen, and I will leave.
Wonderful. All right, so we have a great panel today. I'm very excited to share our thoughts with you all about how the operational impacts we're seeing to solar O&M. We have Justin Johnson from CD Aravan. We also have Frank Sforza from Capital. We have Max Isaacs from Cypress Creek Renewables, and Nick DeVries from Silicon Ranch. Wonderful, we are all here. I'd like to invite each of you to introduce yourselves and share with us a little bit about the portfolios that you're managing, as well as how you're managing them. Are you doing this with your crews in-house? or are you working with external partners? Justin, why don't you go first?
All right. My name is Justin Johnson. I'm the CEO of Arevon. We are based out of Scottsdale, and we're part of the Capital Dynamics umbrella of companies. We have a portfolio of about 3,000 megawatts of wind that ranges from the largest utility scale plants down to DG. And we have another 500 megawatts, if I said wind, sorry, 3,000 megawatts of solar, and then we have another 500 megawatts of wind. We do all the asset management, engineering, development, construction here in Scottsdale with about 40 people, but we do outsource the O&M activities to the major O&M companies in the industry.
Very good. All right, and let's see if we can get Nick on the line. Can you hear me? Nick, we can hear you. You get to go first.
Hi
to
there,
introduce
folks.
yourself.
Hi, Nick DeVries with Silicon Ranch. I'm the Vice President of Technology and Asset Management, and coming to you here from Oakland, California, on the West Coast.
Very good. And Nick, will you tell us a little bit about the portfolio that you're managing right now? How distributed is it? And is it primarily being managed with in-house or external resources?
Yeah, sure. So the Silicon Ranch portfolio is something I've worked with probably for 8 or 9 years now, and our plants go back to some of the earliest DG projects, 200, 300 kilowatts on a roof, all the way up to now over 140 megawatts is our largest grid tie project in Georgia.
I can hear you.
So, long span of ages on the projects, rooftop, carport, and ground mount in 14 states across the United States.
Excellent. And do you, certainly you run your own for a number of those. Do you also work with external partners, or is it all in-house?
Yeah, absolutely. Just by the nature of sort of diverse location and types of projects, we work with 3 different O&M companies, large national companies that have good footprint in the different states and in different regions, and even do some of our own self-performance on some of the older and projects located in and around Tennessee, where we're headquartered.
Excellent. Thank you. I think that'll be relevant to our discussion in a moment. Okay, let's see if Max is available to us to say a quick introduction. Can you hear us yet?
Yep, I'm here.
Very good. All right, please introduce yourself and the portfolio you manage.
I'm Max Isaacs, VP of Field Operations and Maintenance for Cypress Creek Renewables. Primarily, our fleet is sort of large ground mounts, anywhere from a megawatt to about 180 megawatts now. So all across the country. We do have some rooftop systems, some carports. So the vast majority of it is large scale, especially in the southeast, ground mount systems. We do a lot of our work in-house. We have a team of about 70 field technicians, regional managers that are out in the field on a daily basis, as well as NERC compliant control center, some good field staff, especially in our Durham office. It's where our main base of operations is.
Excellent. Thank you. Very good. All right, and let's see if we can get our final panelist to introduce himself. Frank, are you there? Frank? All right. Well, while Frank is getting his technical issues resolved, let's go ahead and start with the content. So I think what a lot of us have recognized is that solar operations and maintenance is fairly well suited to these crazy times that we are living in by the nature of the work. Generally speaking, this is, especially for large utility scale sites, we're out in rural areas where it's possible to effectively socially distance ourselves. We see a pretty low density of technicians per site so that they are able to get out there and perform the critical functions but not be too close to each other. And it does seem quite clear that from all of the documentation we've seen from the federal and state governments, electrical maintenance technicians are regarded as critical infrastructure. So while there are a lot of companies that are vying for that designation, we fit very cleanly within that. That said, there have been impacts certainly on what we're starting to see. And I thought we would start by talking about how this is affecting our safety practices. O&M work, of course, can be very dangerous if you're working on live gear, but one of the other aspects of safety that I've been thinking about as I've been trying to work through this rather odd time is just the level of distraction that I feel. And how do we keep our technicians' heads in the game? Are we doing anything extra on that regard? Let's see, Nick, are you still there? Maybe you can kick us off by talking about any additional safety precautions you've been implementing at Silicon Ranch. We see you, Nick, but we can't hear you.
Sorry, there were distractions in my home that I needed to keep things mute for. Yeah, first I want to say I feel very fortunate to be in the solar industry right now. Always have been, but right now I think it's a strong industry to be in. We have revenues. We're selling electricity every day. Our customers are and we're electrical generation. Our workers are exempt and have an important say duty to society to keep energy generating. And so I think I'm very, again, fortunate and happy to be working in solar right now. The on the safety aspect, look, a lot of the rules that we now have been under for a week or two have been evolving over the past 3-4 weeks here in California. Things were very different for a week or two before most of the rest of the nation has started to take on to some of these precautions. First and foremost is travel is really restricted. Very little air travel between our own personnel and those of our service partners or equipment manufacturers. The 6-foot rule and keeping appropriate social distancing has just become the norm throughout, not just our work, but most of what we're doing just as humans right now. So I think those are probably the two key things. But it makes you really stop and think, or what are the work that we're doing? What is the most important work that we have right now? And prioritize and emphasizing what really has to be done, and not just having extra work, extra travel, and things that aren't quite the value adds that deserve that need the travel and need the emphasis.
Have you changed gears with the travel and found different ways to handle travel jobs to help address the concerns of technicians of staying in hotels or trying to eat out at restaurants?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Look, travel at all times is sort of is an added cost to what we do and has to be looked at. But right now we're people who want to get in and help fix some equipment simply cannot or should not be traveling. So this is really we've already been trying to work hard on remote diagnostics, pushing skills down to the local level, certifications of technicians in the regions, and have been really leveraging that to now say, okay, we have no choice but to put those plans into place and then work with partners, whether it's an inverter manufacturer, O&M technicians, to sort of piece together the solutions to fix things rather than counting on people to just get on a plane, which is just a thing of the past right now.
Mm-hmm. Max, how about you? Have you made any additional adjustments to your safety procedures in light of all the new rules?
Yeah, it's pretty similar. Just really trying to restrict travel to just avoid staying in hotels and just any extra outside contact. And then deprioritizing electrical work, some testing that may not be 100% necessary. If we can push that off for a little while, so that we don't have to have 2 people on site all the time. They can keep a little bit more distance from each other. If we do have to have multiple people. Shipping equipment out. If we can't ship the technicians, across the country, we might be able to just ship the drone camera, so we can get the right pieces in the right place, even if it's not necessarily the people that we would normally send out.
Mm-hmm. One of the other concerns that I've heard in the discussions about whether and how to continue dispatching our technicians is the concern for injury, that they may be able to socially distance, but what happens if they get hurt and they need to go to a medical facility to get treatment for injuries? Have you instituted any other practices or policies to try to make sure that their heads are in the game and that they are absolutely functioning as safely as they can? Justin, can you speak to that?
Yes, we don't have technicians in the field doing maintenance on our plants, but we have probably 5 or 6 O&M providers between our solar and wind plants, and we've just taken the best practices from each of them and just tried to share them across the board to make sure folks are doing the right thing. For us in our office, there's everyone is working from home. I actually still come into the office just because I'm the only one in here and I live close by, but everyone's working from home. We ask everyone to just take their time and take extra precautions.
Mm-hmm. Frank, have you seen any impact? Oh, actually, let's pause for a moment and let you introduce yourself, since I think we were struggling with the technical aspects as you were getting logged in.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can hear me, right, Amanda?
We can hear you. Yes, affirmative.
Fantastic. Fantastic. My name is Frank Sforza. I'm the Director of Technical Asset Management here at Sincarfa Capital. We have approximately 100 megawatts of DG facilities, and we are right in the middle of installing approximately another 100 megawatts, mostly in the Northeast, of solar and PV storage. So we have a unique operational live challenge, obviously, amongst this event, and then, of course, the construction challenges. You do outsource our O&M. We use a national RFP model, and then vet based on a provider's ability to provide regional specialists in an area.
Mm-hmm. And especially with your portfolio of DG sites, have you seen impacts in terms of site access rules?
Yeah, absolutely. When you're bucketizing risk, and I think any of us who are privy to the day-to-day realities of the industry we live in understand that there's a lot of different risks that you need to take into account. And with an event like this, you kind of go back to the drawing board to ensure you've got the right categories in place and that everybody is in lockstep with what they are. And as a team, internal, we're addressing them, and then externally, we're working to understand what are the risks that other organizations and facilities are reviewing, and then carving out unique, oftentimes portfolio templated, but then carved unique to a specific facility, or perhaps around a specific set of individuals, access. Fine-tuning those access information and protocols so that we can be a little bit more sensitive to, for instance, the schools, which typically have a wipe down procedure for anybody who's walking in any room, any location that they've been in. They need a full wipe down. So you try to think about, okay, how can we minimize the time that they're spending doing these wipe downs by perhaps using unusual means of entry and access to the facility, not touching certain things, and ensuring that we're thinking about health PPE, not just electrical PPE. So if the facility, for instance, in one instance, we have a situation right now where we're trying to carve out a very high-profile facilities need to mitigate some of their individuals' contact with us, which means that we're going to be donning on health PPE fully and only be entering one room so that we can access and manage the facility. So there's definitely unique challenges that require picking up the phone and having a conversation with those vetted partners, who we pay not just for the good times, but for the difficult times, and then picking up a conversation and having, frank conversations with landlords and folks who are concerned about their risks.
Yeah. While we don't need to procure quite the volume of equipment for the O&M side of things as our EPC partners do, or our EPC sides of our businesses, I'm curious, Max, have you seen any interruption to the supply chain in terms of your ability to procure parts, standard or specialized parts?
Yeah, with specialized parts, we've seen a little bit so far. Special motors for trackers, very specific built pieces of equipment that really can't be sourced anywhere but the one factory that makes them. So I've seen some slowdowns on that side. General electrical items, fuses, conductors, connectors, things like that. We haven't seen any real delay. We have a decent stock on hand anyway. But I haven't seen much of a concern, on that side. We do just stay in constant communication with our suppliers and vendors just to make sure that they have that access to it and try to foresee any delays, before they happen.
Mm-hmm. The headlines that I've been reading these last couple of days are about how we're downgrading expectations for the amount of solar that'll be installed this year as a result of the COVID slowdown. I think I saw Wood Mackenzie predicted that we would see a 30% decrease, particularly in residential, but even potentially an impact to our utility scale sites, which interestingly enough might lead to the opposite problem from what we've been expecting, which could be an oversupply of product. Nick, what are you guys seeing in terms of that? And have you been stocking up on any particular parts in preparation for an eventual supply chain disruption?
Okay. For the most part, I think we're looking at the supply chain for our 2020 projects and projects under construction. Each project leader watches that closely. On the operational side, it has not turned into a large issue, or it hasn't been an issue yet. We maintain spares on our sites. There's always a specialty part that isn't quite there, or not in the stock, or you have it in one part of the country, or not where you need it. That's more the type of issue we've seen. Look, we care about safety, we care about spares at all times, not for when things are running smoothly, but for issues like this. So I think it's strong planning and just a consistent execution on these basics that allows you to go into more these types of events a little more prepared. But again, there's a smattering of specialty parts that are needed and a little slowed down, but honestly not too far different from business as usual.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's always that back, right, of how much to stock and how much to carry on the balance sheet versus predicting what you're going to need.
And you're never ever quite right, but you need to be 80% there.
Right. Justin, how are your investors responding to all of this? Are you hearing additional questions from them, and how are you assuaging their concerns about disruptions?
Yeah, that's a great question, Amanda. So I think the investors, they see this global pandemic and it's affecting every industry. So you just start to question what else is it impacting that isn't in the news yet, including, our solar assets. So there's just those natural questions. And we've just done regular updates with them, whether it's tax equity investors or equity investors, just to explain the current situation on the ground, that the plants are still producing electricity. We're still getting paid for electricity. Our O&M teams are still able to access the facilities and perform the maintenance. We have access to spare parts, all those sorts of things, just to assure them that renewables is actually turning into, it shows just how resilient it is, and how it's a safe haven in times like these. There's a great article in the Wall Street Journal today kind of speaking to the same points. But yeah, so it's just regular updates with investors to assure them that everything is still okay now. That could certainly change in the future. I don't think it will, but we'll just continue to update them as we progress through this.
Yeah, I echo that. I think that generally speaking, our industry is very resilient, as we've demonstrated time again on the solar coaster over the last 15 years. However, I did see an article just this morning about the Jordan shutting down a number of its large-scale solar utility plants in response to a decrease in electrical demand. So, Frank, I wonder, have yours communicated any concern about broader societal impacts that are just well beyond our control, and how would you all respond to that?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, and I think I think that's similar to how Justin answered. I think we're kind of taking this just kind of a day by day. We don't quite know what the future looks like, and so we have to be cautious about becoming too speculative, which oftentimes can feed the tangible levels of fear that are apparent across the entire world. I mean, you flip on the TV and everyone's kind of just freaking out. I think there's a level of caution. I think there's a level of preparation that we choose to engage in, and there's a fine balance between allowing that preparation to give way to outright panic, And the communication to investors needs to be consistent. They're real people asking questions that, frankly, we should already be asking ourselves. So oftentimes it's less about the the question catching us off guard, and more about, this is honestly what we can attribute to what we know. For instance, we know that we can enable our service providers. We know that we can enable them to get to site. We know that we can pick up the phone and have conversations with different folks, and ensure that we're all communicating, just as we're going to pick up the phone to said investor and let them know, hey, here is the challenge, here's where we're getting some wins, and here's where we need to rethink the strategy, both within our organization, but then as you evaluate this investment as a whole. How that relates to production, I think, is still too early to determine. And the reality is this: regardless of how long this event may transpire for and what sort of restrictions may come about through it, solar is a viable resource, and it is going to remain resilient when others perhaps may not be so resilient. And that's because our ability to work remotely, if we need two folks at a single site, we don't need to all be squeezed into a control room, thankfully, whereas some other facilities may have those challenges. So I think there's great opportunity here, and being well prepared continues to present the solar industry in the best possible light in front of the world.
Yeah. So you mentioned that really the backbone of all of this is good communication. And that brings me in my head to the next category, which, how are we taking care of our people? How are we communicating with our in-house technicians? How are we communicating with our partners? Nick, can you speak to any extra steps that you've been taking to keep people connected and keep them in the loop? You're on mute, my friend.
Thank you. When I was younger as an infantry officer, there was a saying that was ingrained in our heads, which was, mission first and people always. We always had to accomplish the mission, but you did it with your people. And if you weren't maintaining communication, spirit, morale with your people, you couldn't accomplish your mission. And this is really what's been resonating with me these past couple weeks is you got to keep the lines of communication open, and more open now than they used to be. Everyone has got extra things to worry about right now, and so extra attention has to be maintained on maintaining morale, keeping people understanding the priorities, and that's really what's been going through my head and those within our company. More all hands meetings. Weekly or daily calls with people that you may not have just had a call with before, but now you just need to check in and make sure that people are continuing to be grounded in where they are and able to perform everything that we ask of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's the how we show that we are caring for people is really important to me. And I think one of the other issues around this is helping them feel like they're equipped to go do this job safely. So we've read headlines about shortages of masks and gloves and sanitizing wipes. Max, have you found that that's been difficult to procure the necessary hygienic supplies to have on the trucks as you're sending your guys out into the field?
We haven't really done a major sort of resupply of our masks or any sort of items like that. All the technicians, they have their first aid kits that are pretty extensive with all the gear they need. We had some extra supplies in the office that have been distributed. But really following the CDC guidance, as it is right now, that masks are for if you're known to be sick, and out in public, but not for just everyone to use all the time. I think trying to keep up with the guidance that we have at the time, and not try to buy up a lot of masks that could really be better used in the hands of healthcare workers and other professionals. If we're going to be alone in the truck going out to a site, I'd rather that mask be in somebody else's hands than or on somebody else's face than on ours.
Yeah, that's a good point. Um, how are you working with your folks to address this question of morale? Because I feel like one of the real impacts that I've observed
Mhm.
in both myself and in the other member companies of the Amicus O&M cooperative is just that there's a lot of fear and that
Mhm.
morale is taking a real hit. So have you done anything extra to help generate a little bit of comfort or connection among your people?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's really frequent calls, just staying in touch, texts, Slack. It's just the more communication that we can have, and getting ahead of those concerns. When all this started to come out, I was getting texts of, is everyone going to be laid off, and just the economy's collapsing and everything's going downhill, and just really letting people know that we're in a really good position. This is probably the best place that you could be of almost any industry right now. It's we can work. We have assets that are important that we need to maintain. We have a good job to do, and we can do it in a pretty isolated manner from everyone else. So we definitely don't foresee any slowdown in the work that's happening. Maybe definitely some reorganization of how we do it. That work, but everyone will stay fully busy. We're still hiring. We're bringing new people in because new assets are coming online, and we have new plants to keep operating. So the grass isn't going to stop growing for this. We still need to keep it cut and keep the work going. I think getting ahead of we have letters that our technicians we sent out to everybody in the field that said uh, gave that guidance that we've had from Department of Homeland Security that shows that this employee is an essential worker. This is what they're working on. They're an essential worker, so they need to be able to get to their job, and it seemed like a little bit of overkill last week when we released it. But one of our employees was, on the way to a site yesterday and was, stopped by the police. Was able to show the letter, show the ID, and was taken care of right then. So he, was allowed to go on to his job. Didn't expect to see that quite so soon, especially in Texas. But it's happening. So I think the more that we can do to get in front of it, have our folks prepared and equipped to be able to handle the situation, just gives them the confidence that they're not going to get stuck in a situation that they're uncomfortable and don't know what to do. And just keeping that feedback with them. We always have safety stand downs. If it's unsafe, you don't do it. And so that goes for electrical work, moving equipment, anything like that. It also goes for health work as well. If you don't feel safe in the situation, it's always okay to step back, call your supervisor, escalate it, and we'll take care of it and support you.
Yeah. I've heard a number of companies within the cooperative express concerns about whether it's ethical to continuing people out into hotspots and whether there is any other potential negative impact from making these now. And I'll direct this question back to Nick, since you guys also have your own in-house technicians. Have you also had discussions around any kind of ethical dilemma of, yes, for the most part, we feel like we can be very safe, but this is still a level of exposure that they're experiencing, they would not potentially have if they were truly sheltering at home?
Yeah, look, that's a tough and a deep question, right? And one that's not normally talked about in O&M technical conferences, and what this conference is normally geared towards. Look, I think that we are looking at travel, not just say to a nearby site, but if you're having to go further into a truly area that has higher cases, we look at each one individually. We don't have, before we could travel to any site at any time for any reason. That's over. So one, we do look and prioritize: is the travel truly needed? Is this for an electrical hazard? Is this for a major performance issue? Or is this just a routine schedule? So we're prioritizing and making sure that we're traveling for important reasons. Okay. I get back to, is it an important reason? Are we mission critical, right? And are we deemed an exempt task, right? And I think energy generation is. But nonetheless, again, mission first, people always. You always have to be assessing that, am I putting these people in the best condition, equipment, training, spirit to succeed? And if you haven't, then as a leader, you have to step back and say, is this really the right thing? Is this really a priority? And I think we're having to do that on each major event that we're going through. But I say all that, and yesterday we had a scheduled outage with Georgia Transmission, a major event. Two parties had to staff up and prepare to shut down the plant for a period of time and bring it back up. We planned for it. People knew what had to happen, and it was executed flawlessly. So all these things are more things to work on, but it doesn't mean we stop operations and stop energy generation.
Yeah, well, and certainly in those cases where there is any question of health and safety, truly part of our critical mission is to make sure that these plants are hazard.
Right.
I'm curious,
and your
Weston,
employees will check that. They'll let you know if it isn't right or they have a concern, if you've empowered them from the get-go and emphasize that you care about safety and you care about them, not just when it's tough out there right now, but at all times.
Yeah. This is when we see if we've done a building that culture where they truly feel
That's right.
empowered. Say no. I'm curious, Justin, if whether you've seen any expressions of concern or any indication that one of your partners didn't feel comfortable going out, and if they've tried to invoke any force majeure clauses in your contracts. Do you know if force majeure includes pandemics as written? Or is everybody filing a
I think it's like anything else regarding contracts and legal, it depends, but we actually haven't seen anything like that on the O&M side. So everyone is putting in plans that have several layers, kind of if this happens, then this is our backup plan, and this is our backup plan to the backup plan. But I think solar benefits on the O&M side in that it has a low technician density. So, our technicians aren't out there interacting a bunch anyways, just because you don't need a lot of them. And then we also, the solar sites are very isolated. So I think that is super beneficial as well, just because there's already a degree of social, at least for the utility scale sites, especially, there's already a degree of social isolation. Our employees have voiced concerns. I think it's totally human and totally natural, and there's all sorts of levels of concern just based upon the type of person you are and the worries you have. And we're trying to stay cognizant of those concerns and listen to them at all layers of our management here so we can address them as they come up. We've tried to be very uplifting and schedule, we're having our second Friday afternoon happy hour this Friday with the whole company, where we all get on Zoom and just kind of, it's fun to see each other's faces. And we've done a lot to share what our home workspaces look like and just kind of increase the social interaction. Yeah, exactly. But it's still TBD, and I think as this progresses, and if it gets, if we have to stay isolated for an extended period of time, it could get more and more difficult, because 2 or 4 weeks maybe is more doable than 2 or 3 months. So we need to continue to continuously monitor it.
Right. And Frank, I know you're based in New York, right? Are you in the city or just outside the city?
So our office is in New York City. However, I am just outside in New Jersey.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I would imagine that just there's a level of ambient concern and fear of the hotspot that New York City has become. Have you heard any of your partners expressing reluctance to get outside or to travel? And have you done anything in particular to help address those concerns or give them if needed?
Yeah, and I think it's palatable, right? We're reading articles on how they're setting up field hospitals in Central Park, right? This isn't something that's 1,000 miles away. This is right here in our backyard. I just have to reiterate something that Max said earlier, talking about just communicating with people, and it was more specific around I think just some of the face masks and stuff, and talking through that. But a lot of this comes back down to relationships, right? you know, thankfully at this time we have not had any folks issue force majeure notices. I don't anticipate that, but that's because, you know, since arriving here at Sincarfa, I worked really hard to vet qualified, smart people to be working on our site. I've gone through and performed a lot of technical retrofits that allow us to have a lot more DG level remote access than what most folks do. My partners know that they can pick up the phone and have a very straightforward conversation with me. And you know, you talk about empowering people. You have to be in that position where there's a mutual professional relationship of trust where we're going to communicate the challenges and try to resolve them before, you know, we throw a piece of paper around, because you know, this event will at some point end, and there'll be a professional relationship that we need to continue through. And if we are so focused on, you know, covering our backside instead of really trying to find a solution, right? We're not really setting ourselves up for future events that may transpire. And I think,
Right.
you know, in all of this, you know, talking about just kind of the whole preparation versus panic piece, you know, this is an opportunity for smart, long-term owner operators and investors who are considering getting into a long-term owner operator model to focus on the efficiencies that include less, you know, site time per technician. I mean, there is no reason, given the current technical resources available to us across multiple industries, to apply that and perform significant amounts of remote troubleshooting. You might have to be a, you know, bit of a bull in the room and get manufacturers to understand your perspective, but there's a lot that we can do now, and that actually allows me to empower my remote technicians to know that you don't have to roll a truck every time a communication device, you know, goes offline. We've got redundancy, cost-effective redundancy that protects you from having to roll to a site immediately. So I think that's really important. But, you know, again, going back to the force majeure piece, no, and I don't foresee that unless, you know, like Justin shared, this thing ends up becoming a multi-month. I mean, if it's over 6 months, that might become more challenging, but you take it a day at a time.
Right. Well, it is my hope that out of all of this, that one of the benefits is that we can relate to each other as humans, and that we can be vulnerable enough to share our fears and help each other through them. You know, I do feel very lucky that this aspect of our industry is as adaptable as it is, but we are all still human. And, you know, getting these little glimpses of each other's world. Welcome to my house. Hey, Nick, I see you on the wall behind you, you know. Happened. We all learned yesterday the lovely patio. Like, there are aspects of this that humanize our relationships in a way that we wouldn't have had otherwise. And so I hope that that translates into the business relationship as well, and into how we enforce contracts. And, you know, as much as we all have to rely on the fences that those contracts represent, there's always a choice in how we enforce them. And so I hope that huge trickles out into our relationships well after this crisis ends. I'd like to ask each of you to pull out your crystal ball a bit, though, to this question of how hardcore should our contingency planning get? You know, we've seen, with a lack of singular federal guidance on how harsh to enforce shutdown requirements, it's very state by state, right? And while so far our designation of critical hasn't been challenged, and we've been able to present the letters when our guys have been stopped, our planning, you know, in your contingency exercises for a period of, we might have to shut down altogether for a block of time, and how to address that. Max, let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think we really need to, you know, come to that understanding of if we can only, you know, most likely we could probably keep our projects running, especially our large scale projects that don't require much maintenance at all. But, you know, only responding to really critical issues of a certain size, you know, something that will impact the grid, will cause, you know, further disruptions. You know, you can turn the inverter off. You can't really turn the modules off on a utility scale farm. You know, we don't have the module level shutdown, rapid shutdown, all that sort of stuff. It's not there. So we have to keep some level of involvement. We can't let the sites catch on fire. You know, that's absolutely not okay. You know, there needs to be some level of ongoing maintenance. But really getting down to those exact terms of what that's going to be, at what level do we roll out, how high do we let the grass get up before we mow it? Because you know, especially depending on the regions, you know, this will be months that we're looking at, and you know, looking at it, but it's not likely going to hit everywhere at the same time. It isn't right now, and it'll sweep through in different areas. So I think you're trying to plan it out, have the contingencies, and just, you know, but you know, up in the Northeast, up in New York, you know, when we just stand down and say we can't get out there unless it is just an absolute critical situation, and just going to stay at home and focus on training.
Mm-hmm. What are your contingency planning?
So what was that? That broke up there.
Oh, sorry. I asked Nick, how far are you taking it in your contingency planning? Learned a new acronym the other day, KFAT POTM, and
Well,
knowledge fusion at the point of decision making.
okay. Well, look, it's a good question, and none of us truly know what's going to happen, and I don't have anything, you know, useful to say that you don't hear on the news, or thoughts on how long it's going to last. Okay, all I can do is try to plan to be robust for things that I can't control. Mentally, we are prepared to be in this mode of operation, and have been told to be, you know, mentally plan for being in this mode for 2 months. But that's not because anyone knows, but that's just to have a mental space, and that this isn't just a week or two. Is it longer than that? It very well could be. So I get back to the sort of those three priorities I talked about earlier. Are we talking about scheduled maintenance that needs to happen, and that's in like vegetation management, or you know, visual PMs, you know, or filter cleanings? Then it's next to, you know, major, you know, events that are causing significant production losses, right? And then lastly, electrical hazards. Okay, and just, you know, Max alluded to, you know, we cannot start fires. We have to be good stewards, and so we have to treat those as the highest priority and rank that work higher than others. But then you're going to look down and say, well, you know, right now a well-built power plant should be able to last for you know, 6 to 9 months, 12 months without attention. It really shouldn't. You just need to do preventative maintenance. But you know, you have projects that need more corrective maintenance, ongoing issues that you've been battling through. And so those we look at and say, what are we can do now while we have some access to prepare those for just getting through the summer. I care about that every summer just because it's a major time frame for energy generation. But now you have to think, if it does get worse this summer, you know, maybe I can't get out and have the hands-on attention that I did last summer or the summer before.
Right. Frank, what is your crystal ball saying as far as the duration of this crisis?
You were there?
We're there.
I love what Nick had to say about being a good steward of things. I love that term, and it's one of my personal. It's something that I keep very close to me, because I understand that being a good steward reflects in every avenue of, you know, your personal and professional work ethic and being. When it comes to looking ahead, I'll just echo likely what everybody's going to say. There's no way that we can know, but we can take it in chunks of time. And I think this 2-month concept that Nick, shared is similar to my own. I've begun to think about probably a 6+ month time frame, and considering doing some either temporary or permanent amendment changes to contracts, so I can start evaluating aerial thermography as a more consistent portfolio-wide practice that can catch a number of issues, mitigate site time, and perhaps help me to be more strategic in dealing with issues that I may or may not know about, and then kind of, prioritize my response across the portfolio to the issues. That'd be, when we're talking about crystal ball and how many layers deep, that's probably where I will go with this. Again, this goes back to having good partners who will work with you and let you know, hey, we can make this area of the country work with this scope, and maybe we change it up and figure it out, and do some swaps either on a temporary or a permanent basis. But we work to figure that out.
Yeah. Justin, you still with us?
Yes, I'm still here.
All right.
So
what does your crystal ball have to say?
we are currently planning, I don't think my crystal ball is any better than anyone's, but we're currently planning to be working from home through the end of May. That could change depending on how the situation develops and progresses. And our New York counterparts are doing the same thing. I think going forward, this, one of the things that's been very beneficial to a lot of us. Certainly, this has been stressful in many ways and required a lot of additional work, but a lot of, myself and a lot of people I work with have had a lot less travel, which tends to eat up a lot of our time. So we're using some of that extra time that freed up to, we're going to start some additional training and just kind of like lunch and learn things to familiarize people on various aspects of our company, our industry. So that's been nice. I think that I'm wondering if the less travel may persist going forward for some time, just because as we all get accustomed to, video conferences and just the, Microsoft Teams and things like that, that really allow you to improve collaboration and communication in real time. And then I do wonder, just the societal implications of, of something like COVID, and kind of just, there already is a natural fear of the unknown and unseen. And I think that something like this will amplify that. And I like the binding implications of how this should hopefully bring society together, because we're all one people and we're working to save each other, and we're understanding that our actions affect others, whether or not we're at risk. So that has been really inspiring to see, for people just to kind of, recognize their social duty to isolate. I do hope that the broader implications of like the fear of the unknown and unseen reside once this whole COVID mess is settled. But I think that may take additional time for people to kind of fully work through work through those consequences.
Yeah. I hope so too. I hope that it will subside, but I think that there's that fight or flight aspect of our nature, right? That we pay extra attention to threats because they could have lasting impacts on our survival. And that's why we tend to focus and emphasize them so much more than the happy, positive things. And I think it's going to take a little while for that to go away. Someone on the call yesterday made the point that after 9/11 was one of the other defining events of our lives, for our generations, there were lasting effects, and it took a long time. There were some beautiful lasting effects of that sense of solidarity that we had. Agree that this virus represents a common enemy. It may have another type of solidarity that we all feel in the social contract, that we're not staying home just for ourselves, but for our our healthcare facilities and the doctors and folks on the front line. That's so important, and that's part of our social contract. So if you are on the line and you have any additional questions in our last 5 minutes, please feel free to pop those in. My last question to you is along that line, though. What are the lasting effects we'll see as a result of this period of history? Frank, you get to go first in 30 seconds or less.
Efficiencies. I think we're going to see a lot more efficiencies with organizations choosing to adopt a more remote workforce to decentralize risk amongst high levels of talent that they may have incorporated into their places of business. And I think it will not be uncommon to see that as a standard moving forward.
Good one. All right. Justin, what do you think?
Sorry, I was on mute there. I think, I
That
mean,
makes
just
sense.
outside of the solar industry in general, just in terms of how we live our lives, I think you'll see a lot more touchless forms of communication or interaction, whether that's, like I think when I go to the store to buy something, I'm exchanging a credit card or cash. I think you could see a lot more touchless forms of payment going forward. And I do think there will be, like as I said earlier, just with the power of these video conferences and chat functions like Microsoft Teams, you will see less travel and more interaction, which is actually good. It's just kind of the older generation that doesn't adjust to new technologies as quickly, myself included, like is now seeing the power of that and using it much more than we were previously. So
yeah. Nick, what do you predict?
Yeah. No, on both the sort of the business and the social front, I think about the setting of priorities. On the business side, what is truly most important right now? What can we not let drop? What's on the bubble, and what are things that we can deprioritize, so that we can be making mission and keeping our people safe while generating electricity. On the social side, I see the same thing, and already in my household, what are the things that we are now able to do, and what are the things that we really want to do? Okay. Right now, we're spent with my family. We're spending more time on making more food of our own, things that just took more time and daily tasks that you'd ever had time for before, or never seemed to have time for before. So there's that inward look and focus on what truly matters to me, to my family. What do we love doing? Obviously, some of that is outside of the house too, and we're really looking forward to get back to see friends and family members, and to get to different parts of the state and the country. But I think we'll do that with a new respect and on prioritization, and do things more purposely than before.
Mm-hmm. Max, do you have any good predictions for us?
Probably second, kind of what everyone else said. I think going along with the being able to work remotely, we are adapting to this new technology. It's working fairly well, but also just how important actual human contact and interaction is. Being able to see your coworkers face to face and be in the same room with them. While we can do a virtual meeting, and it can get the work done, it's really having an appreciation for being around a good group of folks.
Yeah, that's very well said. I laughingly joke that the answer to all questions is that it's a balance, right? Or it depends. But the balance here is in finding those meaningful forms of connection, honoring those that we have, taking those times to look at ourselves and say, what is important to me and my family today? What is going to persist past this particular moment of mayhem? However, I have one more prediction, which is that despite the fact that we are all now used to 4 or 5 different video conferencing platforms, I predict that people will still struggle with how to appropriately apply the mute button. So
I think today's conference call proved your point there, and you're probably onto something.
Yeah, that one's going to persist, I'm afraid. All right,
I do
haven't
agree
seen any.
with what Max said, though. That is a very good point about people missing being together. Like I see that with my coworkers. We all miss being in the office together. My teenage girls miss going to school, which I thought I'd never hear. It just, it's, we've all learned a lot because of this.
Indeed. Same with my kids, that they never thought they'd say that either. All right. Well, I haven't seen any other questions come in on our chat feature here, so I think we've also reached the end of our time. But I want to say thank you to the 4 of you for the preparation that you put into this, and for sharing your outlook and your tips with the rest of us. And I look forward to next week, the SAMNA Live event, and how that will enable us to still feel connected.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you,
likewise.
Amanda.
Looking forward to next week's
All
event.
right,
Thank you to everyone else.
Thanks, Amanda.
Yes.
Thanks, Amanda.
With that, we're indeed ending and coming back from your side of the world to Rotterdam. And if all went well, you're now able to see me. I would like to thank the speakers that were just on the panel for making the time, for showing us around, also in their homey environment. As was mentioned by one of the speakers, this is a more personal setup than normal, and we really appreciate everyone putting in the efforts, the time, and also the conscious decision to be part of this. Even though we had a rocky start, we apologize for that. As said, it's innovation, we're trying new things, we're finding out how to do these conferences online, and we really appreciate your patience sticking with us through this live stream and also asking all the questions you had. Any questions that are still open, we're taking back to the team, we're taking back to the speakers, and we might actually integrate in next week's program of SAMNA Live. So with SAMNA Live coming up next week on the 7th and 8th, I want to shortly highlight to you, as we got this question throughout the live stream as well, what the program will look like. With our set of speakers and our geared up product that was ready to go for the 7th and 8th of April, we reshaped this event. The physical event, as was, will take place in the future, at a future date when we can all get back together, physically shake hands, have fun, and jump on stage whenever there's an issue with audio to take over and entertain. But for now, we'll have to deal with the digital environment. And while we have the digital environment, we have made a reshape program, which will take place on the 7th and 8th for around 3 to 4 hours, live streamed every day. We're starting every morning with 2 panels, which are related both to COVID-19 industry impacts as well as our normal solar asset management topics that we're hosting. You can find the full program outline for these panels, including the speakers, online. We refer you to that to our website, because you'll have the most up-to-date overview and no issues with technical backlash or anything. In principle, you can find everything there. After the panels, we're taking a networking break, because we want you to experience our events as they are normally, to as much and closely resemble what we would have hosted on the 7th and 8th, what you're used to from us at Solar Plaza. So in the networking breaks after the panels, you'll get the opportunity with our networking app that you already know if you joined one of our conferences, to set up meetings with the other attendees, to join video chats with them and actually have a conversation, to join speed dating exercises, as well as also roundtables, where you can discuss also topical issues while networking with your peers. During the networking break, we'll host all of that also on the platform for the virtual event. And after that, we'll have more content for you. At every day, we have 1 hour left, one workshop and one presentation, where you can also engage in Q&A with the speakers, as well as afterwards pre-recorded content. So all in all, a super full program. You might be able to see here also on the screen an indication of what the topics look like and who is speaking, and all of that is also available from the website. I think this covers the summary of what the SAMNA Live event will be. As said, high-level content as well as networking with your peers. Anyone who wants to add a registration to this event can also visit our website. Anyone who was already registered for the physical event will have access automatically and will receive an email to join us next week. As usual from us, you can send out any question you have beforehand to our email, to any of the team, also to me personally. We're happy to engage with you throughout this week on anything that's unclear. But for now, I want to stay with this concept that has been explained to you lightly, refer you to the website for any other questions, and get in touch with us if there's anything unclear, if you have any recommendations to us, and also to stay tuned and energized on working together on accelerating the sustainable energy transition. Because in the end, no matter how it goes, any challenges we have, any hiccups, whether it's technical, whether it's in real life, it doesn't matter. Our end goal is to accelerate that sustainable energy transition, and we'll keep on doing that no matter what. And we hope that you join us in that journey. And we wish you a really pleasant evening, day, wherever you are. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we hope to see you next week at the live event. Thanks a lot. Then, before we head off, a very important element for us is we want to thank all of our partners that are part of this journey, all of the people that have expressed faith in our mission, that are with us on this journey. And we really, really appreciate and are grateful that you stick around and that you have faith in making all of this happen, even in these hard times. We're in this together. Thanks again. As you see, it's a long list of partners, and we're happy to also have them next week in the virtual event. So keep up the good work and hope to see you next week. Thanks to all. Namaste.